All right, welcome to pro football. First 50 years where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. And especially if you're going to go back in time and check out a football game from like the 20s or the 30s. I mean, sure, you can go online, find a box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was, someone kicked, where the game was played at, what the attendance was. You might find starting lineups for each team, but exactly what happened during the game. Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos here, nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on. And today's game, Battle of Pennsylvania. The game that would officially pretty much end the Eagles season. Philadelphia Eagles at the Pittsburgh Steelers at Forbes Field, November 29th, 1959. Ooh. These teams, had some struggles, especially maybe during the 50s and all. But both these teams wound up with winning records. The Eagles wound up tied in second place with the Cleveland Browns, both 7-5 records. For the Browns, that would be a disappointing season, but for the Eagles, a 7-5 record in 1959, very successful. And for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they would wind up 6-5-1, and it would wind up in third place. Their problem. Let's pop that up. Start showing you the Eagles first, but let's remove this here. But the Steelers, the last two seasons, 58, especially 58. I mean, they ended up the season really good. What killed the Steelers in 58 and 59 was that they just laid a goose. I mean, in the beginning of the season. But let's pop up the Eagles here. Show you them. I mean, the Eagles coming into this game had 3 losses. Giants had 2. So the Eagles, with got 3 games left in the season here. So the Eagles really needed to win this game. Very, very important. But spoiler alert, we come down here. The Eagles would lose this game 31-0. So this was pretty much not 100%, because even though they lost this game here, they would have 4 losses. The Giants would still have 2. So the Eagles still had a chance. You tell me we got a chance, right? Well, yeah, but not really. Giants would have to lose their final 2 games, which didn't happen. And the Eagles would have to win their final 2 games, which didn't happen, in order for the Eagles and the Giants to have a tie for the Eastern Division title. And they would have to play a playoff game. The Eagles have to win that to go to the championship. So, but none of that happened. So we don't have to worry about that. But you see, the Eagles, didn't have a very good preseason. But once again, it was preseason. But, there's always 2 ways. If you're playing the game, you do like to win the preseason games. But if you don't win, it's only preseason, right? They were 2-4. They did whoop up on the Colts. However, in that game, Lenny Moore, there's 3 pretty good guys last time I checked. Raymond Berry, R.I.P., brother, R.I.P. I don't know if he's the last guy alive from the 58 championship game or not. I don't know. But R.I.P., Mr. Raymond Berry, one of the truly greatest of all time, and one of the biggest reasons the Giants lost that 58 championship game. But anyway, meanwhile, back at the ranch, Raymond Berry, John Unitas, and Lenny Moore didn't play in this particular exhibition game. So that kind of put a little damper on the Colts offense. So one of the big reasons why the Eagles won this one, 35-13, won this again. It was just preseason. But the Eagles were rather consistent, shall we say, during the regular season. They were very good at home. They were not so good on the road, as we see in this game here. This is a road game, and they were not very good on the road in here. This was one of the one of the article titles, I said the Eagles got a snow job or something like that. There was snow in this game, lots of snow. So I love it. Football out in the weather elements. If I had 3 thumbs, I'd give you 3 thumbs up. Love it. But and then of course the Eagles. I said it's funny. It's almost comical. They would lose a game, then they would win 2. Then they would lose a game, then they would win 2. Then they would a whole season long, pretty much. So the first game of the season, they were on the road and they lost. Not very good, road team. Then they won 2. Then they were in New York and the Giants beat them. So the Eagles lost. Then the Eagles won 2. Then they lost. Then they won 2. Then they lost. So then they won 1, and then they lost the last game of the season to the Browns. It didn't matter by that time because the Eagles were out of it. The Browns were out of it. But the Eagles with Coach Buckshaw, very good coach. The Eagles had 2 wins in 1958. Buckshaw replaced almost like half the roster with either new veterans or draft picks, and he got a lot of results. They went from 2 wins in 58 to 7 wins in 59. Fantastic season for in a 12-game season. You go +5 from one year to the next. They have nothing. I mean, of course, they're bummed out. They wanted to win the title. I get that, but still, fantastic season for the Eagles. Then, of course, they would take it even to the next level, which is what you wanted. Keep ascending, right? And they took it to 10 wins in 1960, where they would win the title. They would make Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers and give Vince Lombardi his only postseason coaching career loss. He had 10 career postseason games he was in, and he was 9-1. His only one loss was the 1960 championship game. But for the Steelers, they pretty much were the same thing as far as like the preseason. Not super spectacular, right? What were they? They the same thing when they were 2-4 at 2-4. Yeah, I mean they beat the Browns, lost to the Cardinals. They got annihilated by the Bears, lost to the Colts. Then they beat the Cardinals. I mean, odd, right? They played the Cardinals twice in preseason. That don't happen nowadays because we only play 3 games. And then they lost a tough one here to the Packers. But and I'll show you the season before that. What really took them out of the running, took them out of contention, was to be their lousy start. Now, if we look here, right, what we got? They beat. This is the real kicker in the crotch here, right? They would beat the Browns. Okay, no easy feat by any stretch of imagination. Then I think the Redskins won 3 games all year. So and at home they lost to the Redskins. Then they lost to the Eagles. Then they beat the Redskins. Then they lost and lost. Right. So I mean, they after and I mean, and then they I mean, I can't even talk. They lost to the Redskins, who had 3 wins, and they lost to the Cardinals, who had 2 wins, and they got blown out by the Cardinals. I mean, but then, so I mean, they were out of it by here. But here they went out of their final 6 games, they were 4-1-1. They tied the Lions, but once again, the Lions were only won 3 games all year too. So that's not. But then you notice here, they beat the Giants, who only had 2 losses all year. Then they beat the Browns. Then they blew out the Eagles. Then they lost a tough one on the road to the Bears, who are 8-4. That's nothing to be ashamed of there. And then they beat the Cardinals. I mean, the final 5 games, actually the final 6 games of the season, they only had 1 loss. They were 4-1-1. Now, kind of shows you. I'll show you what happened in 58. I mean, you can almost. Maybe they weren't the best team, but you can almost argue the final. With the Steelers, the final, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The final 7 games of the season last year, you can almost argue they were the best team in football. They were 6-0-1. They did the final 7 games. They didn't lose a game. Once again, they beat the Giants. They whooped up on the Giants. So, the Giants winning division titles and going to championship games, and each year they keep losing to the Steelers. Steelers are good enough to whoop up on the Giants, but they can't beat the other teams. It's like, come on, man. But I said, what did them in was they lost here to the 49ers, they lost to the Browns, and they beat the Eagles, and they lost to the Browns, and they lost to the Giants, but then they went on a roll. But I mean, their record was it 7-4-1? Yeah, 7. So they went from 7-4-1 to 6-5-1. But once again, the winning seasons. So I mean, which were not aplenty, shall we say, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously, because it took them till 1972 to win their first ever playoff game, right? So, that was 1958. But I mean, it was the same thing. They had a slow start, and it took them pretty much out of contention, 58 and 59, right? But this game was played at good old Forbes Field. So what does good old Wikipedia got to say about Forbes Field there? All right. Forbes Field was a baseball park in Oakland neighborhood of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania from 1909 to 1970. It was the third home of the Pittsburgh Pirates and the first home of the Pittsburgh Steelers. From 1909 to 1924, the stadium also served as the home football field for the University of the Pitt Panthers, which would also be home to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a short bit of time as well. So, I'm sorry. The Steelers would play at University of Pitt Stadium in the 60s. U.S. $1 million, baby. Yeah. Was launched by the Pittsburgh Pirates owner Barney Dreyfuss to replace his franchise's second home, Exposition Park. The stadium was made of concrete and steel, the first such stadium in the National League and the third in Major League Baseball, in a bid to be more durable than wooden ballparks. Yeah, I mean, the durability plus the fire hazard. I mean, don't get me wrong, you could start a fire in concrete and steel, but wooden grandstands go up a little bit easier in a fire, right? Let's see. The Pirates opened Forbes Field on June 30th, 1909 against the Chicago Cubs and played their final game against the Cubs on June 28th, 1970. Let's see here. Some remnants of the ballpark still stand, surrounded by the campus of the University of Pittsburgh. Fans gather on the site annually on the anniversary of Bill Mazeroski's World Series winning home run. All right. 1903, Pittsburgh Pirates owner Barney Dreyfuss began to look for ground to build a larger capacity replacement for the team's then current home, Exposition Park. Dreyfuss purchased, I can talk, I promise, 7 acres of land near the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, adjacent to Skenley, I'm going to say Park, with assistance from his friend, industrialist, have you heard of him? Andrew Carnegie, the Steel Man. Possibly the richest man in the world at the time, or probably the richest man in the world at the time, Andrew Carnegie. The low-priced land was selected so drivers could spend more on the stadium itself. Let's see. All right, opening. Here we go. The first game was played at Forbes Field on June 30th, 1909, one day after the Pittsburgh Pirates had defeated the Cubs 8-1 at Exposition Park. Fans began to arrive at the stadium 6.5 hours early for the 3:30 game. Weather conditions were reported as clear skies with a temperature around 80 degrees. Flags flew at half-staff to honor the recently deceased presidents of the Philadelphia Phillies and the Boston Doves. Wow. Here we go. There's a picture over there. See down there? Forbes Field and Belfield Bridge, 1909. Wow. Look at that freaking picture, huh? Oh, I love old pictures, man. It's amazing. It's like me old, right? Playing field. Forbes Field outfield wall and the flagpole in its original location in the neighborhood of Oakland. Gotta love it, man. That's beautiful. Love it. The stadium was widely considered the best in the league. Dreyfus hated cheap home runs and vowed he'd have none in his park, which led him to design a large playing field for Forbes Field. The original distances to the outfield fences in the left, center, and right field were 360, 462, that's a shot, and 376, respectively. Ain't no cheap home runs there, baby. I can tell you that much. Let's see. 1921, the seating capacity was increased by addition of several rows of new box seats. 1925, seating capacity received a bigger bump when the right field grandstands was extended into the corner and into fair territory, replacing a section of wooden bleachers. Though Forbes Field developed a reputation as a pitcher-friendly ballpark, there was never a no-hitter thrown in more than 4,700 games at the stadium. Wow, that's tough to do. Now you can see here that's a nice size. Look at that, that's a nice size field right there. But you'll once again you also notice, right? I mean, by showing you some pictures, it's like you can see the double decks and all that where it holds a lot of people. But over here, it's like nobody. Way out over here. I mean, that's because you can see there's a street here, I guess, and I guess it was, designed, where to fit in sometimes in between, I guess, the streets, or they built the street maybe around the stadium. That I'm not exactly sure, but it's just weird. Like they have all this seating, and there's nothing out over here. As well, we'll see in some pictures here. Where we got it, seating. Here we go. A recreated entrance, including ticket window located near the remaining outfield wall. Though Forbes Field was praised upon its opening, it began to show its age after 60 years. It's a shame. I mean, some saying it can be saved. Oh, I guess it's feasible to save them. Others, I guess not. The park was the second oldest baseball field in the league at the time. Only Shibe Park in Philadelphia was older. Wow. Let's see. The location of the park, which initially was criticized for not being developed, grew into a bustling business district, which led to the lack of parking space, unfortunately. Said one sports writer wrote that the House of Thrills had become as joyless as a prison exercise yard. Wow. Memorials. The left field wall was moved to PNC Park in 2009. Right? There's a monument there. I mean, if I read all of this stuff, I could go on and on and on and on and on. I mean, that's a big Forbes Field in its early years. That's a big size field right there. That's big. Here we go. University of Pittsburgh football team moved from Exposition Park into Forbes Field upon its opening in 1909 and played there until 1924, when it moved into a larger Pitt Stadium only a few blocks away, and that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers would move actually in the 60s. Let's see, in their first game at Forbes Field on October 16, 1909, the Pittsburgh Panthers defeated Bucknell University 18-6. Oh, here we go. Okay, this is 1940. The NFL's Pirates were renamed the Steelers. 1933, they when it got into the league, the NFL is the Pittsburgh Pirates. From 33 to 39, they were the Pirates. In 1940, they got renamed the Steelers, and otherwise struggled during much of their 3 decades of tenancy at the Forbes Field. The club achieved its first winning record in 1942, its 10th season in existence. So it took them a long time just to have a winning season. The Steelers blew out the Giants. Was it November 30th, 1952, 63-7. Blew them out. The University of Pittsburgh's acquisition of Forbes Field in 1958 gave the Steelers some options, and they began transferring some of their home games to much larger Pitt Stadium that year. The Steelers played their final game at Forbes Field on December 1st, 1963. The franchise moved to Pitt Stadium exclusively in 1964. And there you go, Pittsburgh Panthers game against Washington and Jefferson College. Now you can just see, we got some over here, right? You see the double deck, right? But then like out over here is like nothing. But don't be fooled. Washington Jefferson was, for a period of time, was a very good college football team, believe it or not. Bob Folwell, the first ever head coach of the New York Giants, he only coached them for 1 year in 1925, was the head coach for Washington and Jefferson for a few years, and he had them up there. I mean, they were a very, very good football team. I mean, there was tons of things, obviously, as you see here, boxing and other events was there, you know. And we got a bunch of stuff here. There's a lot of things that, yeah. Just once again, one of those things that you know, the stadium grew old and it was time to replace it. So, all right, so we got some pictures here. Pop up here. Where we at? Share the screen. Forbes Field, Pittsburgh Steelers. There we go. Now this one here is a beauty. I wish I had a better close-up of it or something like that. 1949. Opening day between the Giants and the Steelers. So you got the Giants over here in the red and the Steelers over here. But I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, it doesn't look like it's colorized. Not like, I'm not an expert on anything like that. So, but this does not look like it's colorized. This looks like it's a actual 1949 photo. So I don't know what the heck that would be. Darn near almost 80 years ago, this picture was taken. But you see both teams are on the same sideline. The Giants are over here and the Steelers are over here. But once again, you look out here, it's like, you know, where the people at? Right? Here we go. Now, I don't know if this is this looks like a drawing. I don't know if it's supposed to be Mazeroski's game-winning home run or something like that when he hit it over the scoreboard over here. I guess that's Yogi Berra out here. Because that's not Yogi Berra there. I think this was Yogi Berra here playing in the outfield. Let's see. Oh, this is unfortunately, yeah, after Forbes, I guess before it got torn down. Let's see. We got another picture here, right? Well, Forbes Field, Pittsburgh memories, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This could be the Giants again too, possibly. But you see the infield here. Here we go. Got this. Is this the? Nah, there's people in the outfield now. What do we got? See if I touch the picture to try to see who the game was against. It'll screw up on me. Here we go. Here's a. Oh darn! I'm gonna try to see a bigger picture of it here. Oh, here we go. All right, Forbes Field. So once again, it's like it's the bunch of people over here, behind over here, and all, and then it comes out over here, and right, double deck, and then there's like nothing. So they're leaving a lot of, I'm not exactly sure, so please forgive me. What the constraints were, why they didn't double deck the whole all the way around, or why there's, not seating over here. Why they got seating halfway over, halfway from the right field pole, halfway to center field, and then over here there's absolutely nothing. Don't know. But when he purchased this land, right, in like the turn of the century, right, there wasn't streets and all kinds of, at least I don't think, back there. So is this Forbes Field there? Forbes Field 8x10. There you go. Now this actually, you know what? This photo could be from this game we're going to talk about, because this is the Eagles. I would bet my bottom dollar. And of course, this is the Steelers. So this might be this game, because this game was very snowy. Very, very snowy. So, is this Forbes Field? Yeah, there you go. So, Steelers versus the Redskins at Forbes Field in the early 50s. And once again, it's like, where are the people at? Right, you see the scoreboard out there in left field. Right, it's like, where are the fans at? Just once again, one of those, to me anyway, I'm an old-time fart. Right. 1959. Here we go. Season recap. All right, so this is the season we're talking about. Where are the people? Yeah, I'm an old time fart. I like this is in 1964 here. This is a Wyatt Tittle. He got hurt against the Steelers, but this might be Pitt Stadium here. Let me see here. This is where is that famous shot. This is the 1964. Is the season the Giants fell apart. This was Wyatt Tittle's final season. So let's see this game might be that picture. Let me see here real fast. New York Giants. That game was okay. That game was played at Pitt Stadium. Okay. Yes, this is Pitt Stadium, but the Steelers were the home team in this game. But this is not Forbes Field. This is when Wyatt Tittle got tackled in the end zone. His helmet's laying on the ground there, cracked. He's bleeding over here and everything. But here's another shot. Beautiful Forbes Field on the outside. I mean, absolutely beautiful. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like this is kind of like the way it is like with Fenway Park. You go Fenway Park, you're walking down a street, and as you're walking, the stadium's right. As you're walking down the street, right, the stadium's right here. I mean, just absolutely beautiful. Just unfortunately, as I said, some of these stadiums they're able to maintain, keep alive, like Wrigley Field, Fenway Park, and some of them, a lot of them, meet their death sooner or later. But it served its purpose for a long period of time, and for this particular game, it was home, right? So, all right, so let's a little pregame action here. So, what's the word on the street here? I can tell you, Otto Graham is wrong. I can tell you about that. Well, as soon as we pop that up, I'll show you. So let's go to the November 29th, 1959 edition of the Pittsburgh Sun-Telegraph. Ooh. Let me pop this up here. Pittsburgh Sun-Telegraph, share screen. Where are we at? There we go. All right. November 29th, 1959. Bam. And I have to refresh. Every page is going to get screwed up. Steelers get a second shot at the Eagles. A Steeler team that has taken a delight in shooting down clubs of higher standings gets another shot at such opposition, and they would do that. That's what they would do. In meeting the Philadelphia Eagles at Forbes Field at 2:00 this afternoon. 3 of the 4 victories racked up by the Steelers have been at the expense of teams, the Redskins, Giants, and Browns, that outranked them in the Eastern Conference. Well, by the end of the season, the Steelers, the Redskins would not be outranking the Steelers. Currently, the Eagles are 6-3 and tied with the Browns for second place, and that makes them vulnerable to the hex of Bobby Lane and cohorts, who are fourth at 4-4-1. As I said, after this, the Eagles season will pretty much be, over. As far as trying to win the title, the division, and then the championship. However, the Steelers have more than just a habit going for them. They have been playing the best ball in the division the past 2 weeks, as the 14-9 victory over the Giants, the Steelers, and the 21-20 Heartstopper over the Browns last Sunday plainly indicate. Yeah, the Giants only lost 2 games all year. And interestingly, they lost 2 games all year. One was to the Steelers, 14-9, and the other was to the Eagles. And the Eagles whooped up on them, 49-21. Lane, who had been off his firing mark in early games, has been hitting with his passes for touchdowns, and the receivers Jimmy Orr, Tom Tracy, Gern Nagler have been most receptive. The running end of Coach Buddy Parker's team, woefully weak for the first half of the campaign, also has picked up tremendously, with Tracy and rookie Tommy Barnett doing most of the ground hauling. Improvement in the latter department is due mainly to the top quality of blocking by the line and the extra drive of Tracy and Barnett. Defensively, the Steelers stand out. Their line with Captain Ernie Stautner returned to tackle along with Joe Kruppa. The work of George Tarasovic and Billy Ray Smith at ends, and linebackers John Rieger, it's either Rieger or Rager, Mike Henry, and Soup Campbell has stopped practically everybody but Jim Brown, the Browns' great fullback, who has to be classified as unstoppable. Yeah, that's pretty good classification. Of course, today is another day and game that the combined efforts of the offense and defense will have to continue top grade to take the Eagles. Now, one of the problems the Eagles have had has been the running game. The running game has not been very good all year. But thankfully, Norm Van Brock, the Dutchman, has been pulling him out of the fire. I mean, it's been his passing. The Eagles were relying on their running game to win in the 1959 season. They may not have any wins. The biggest problem will rest with the defensemen. It will be their job to handle quarterback Norm Van Brocklin, who is responsible for installing the jet motors on the Birds. Van Brocklin, who has been around the league as long as Lane and has been considered Bobby's equal by some coaches, probably is the toughest passer in the game to rush. The Dutchman foils the efforts of the Red Dogs with his uncanny expediency in getting rid of the ball with alarming effect. That's what you have to do that, right? You got somebody bearing down on you, and you gotta know where to go. You got to know where to go within whatever. That's why they're the quarterbacks. That's why not everybody can do it. I could get rid of it, but I would be throwing it into the dirt. Right? I could go a whole game without getting sacked, but I wouldn't complete a pass. But Norm Van Brocklin would be. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame. To prove this, Van Brocklin is connected on 143 passes out of 257 tosses, which is very good for 1959. For 1,900 yards and 12 touchdowns, only 12 of his flings have been intercepted. Lane is hit on 111 and 227, so he's not even at 50%. He's thrown for 1,498 yards and 11 TDs, and he's had 19 interceptions. But the Eagles haven't been strictly airborne. Their rushing game also has been productive. Well, if you want to call it that. The rushing, I mean, they have some good. I think it's some of it has to do with their blocking. You know, they have some decent runners. Let's see. Runners like Billy Barnes, Clarence Peaks, and Theron Sapp have accounted for most of the 1,075 yards rushed, the best ground gaining the Eagles have done on 5 years. Well, I mean, you figure this is they played 9 games and they've rushed for a little over 1,000 yards, so they're running for a little over 100 yards a game. Now, this is 1959. It's a running. I mean, so if you're only running for whatever, a little over 100 yards a game, that's not too good. I mean, sure, it could be worse, but obviously there are better teams rushing the ball than the Eagles. Incidentally, it was the Eagles running with some aid of poor officiating that enabled them to hang a 28-24 defeat on the Steelers in the game played in Philly on October 11th. The Birds picked up 3 of their TDs on the ground, with only the last one through the air as Van Brocklin threw an 18-yarder to Tommy McDonald. One other was a 58-yard return of a punt by rookie Art Powell when the Steelers had only 10 men on the field. Parker, in an effort to win 3 in a row, will go with the same backfield that helped cop the last 2. Lane will be at quarterback with Ray Matthews and Barnett, the halfbacks, and Tracy at fullback. The Eagles will have Van Brocklin, Barnes, McDonald, and Peaks. And if the Steelers win by more than 4 points, the point spread is 3, they'll pick up the Skenley Trophy, donated by the Skenley Distilling Company. Okay. A crowd of 30,000 or better, depending on the weather, is expected to see the game. Well, depending upon the weather, it's going to be snowy. But here we go. Graham picks the Eagles over the hot Steelers. Well, folks, Mom was wrong again, didn't she? Otto Graham, there he is. Now that the Baltimore Colts are acting like champions again and the Browns have had their winning streak halted at 5 straight, it looks like another frantic finish in pro football. That explosion by the Colts was overdue, but the size of the score against the 49ers surprised me. The 49ers have been a solid defensive team all season. Here we go. Eagles over Steelers. The Steelers have been one of the league's hottest teams the past 2 weeks, defeating both the Giants and the Browns. They must have been at a high emotional pitch, and that is difficult. He's got a good point here. He's got a very good point. I honestly, after they beat the Giants, you could see the following week where they definitely would let down against the Browns, but they beat the Giants and the Browns back to back. And you can see where a letdown would be coming, but nope. The Eagles have developed a habit of winning the close ones. With Lane throwing for the Steelers and Norm Van Brocklin for the Eagles, it may boil down to which one is having the better day. I'll string along with the Eagles. Ooh. All right. Okay, next we're going to go to the November 29th, 1959 edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer. What do they got to say? All right, let me refresh this before the page screws up here. Steelers, slight favorite to defeat the Eagles today. Buck Shaw's big package of surprise as a date Sunday in Pittsburgh, where Buddy Parker lately has been unwrapping some surprises of his own. Freely translated, this is a way of saying the Eagles, the season-long surprise of the National Football League. Not the Eagles and the Packers. They both finished with 7 wins. So the Eagles and the Packers have been, both teams, the season-long surprise of the National Football League. But the Eagles meet the Steelers, who have been a late-coming surprise team. Now, the Eagles won 2 games in 58. They went from 2 wins to 7 wins. The Packers won 1 game in 58. They went from 1 to 7 wins. So, of course, they had Vince Lombardi, right? In the last 2 weeks, Bobby Lane is in my end. And his Western Pennsylvania playmates have possibly astonished the New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns, throwing the Eastern race into such a turmoil that even the Eagles could win it. At least they believe they can. Their 6-3 record has them tied with the Browns for second place, a game behind the Giants. The Eagles are in a mental and physical moods to make liars of the odds setters, who lean slightly toward the Steelers, who have a 4-4-1 record. The Wise Boys give the Steelers a shade mainly because they are playing this televised game, Channel 10 at 2:05 p.m. at home, and they are healthier than when they dropped the 28-24 squeaker to the Eagles 2 weeks ago at Franklin Field. Jack Butler, a defensive backfield specialist, who some rate in the same class with the Eagles' classy Tom Brookshire, is much healthier than he was in Philadelphia. So is Jimmy Orr, one of Lane's favorite targets. Latest league statistics list Lane as the circuit's 13th ranked passer. Wow, there's only 12 teams and he's ranked 13th. Ooh. But Bobby Lane, what he has not had super spectacular numbers, but Bobby Lane is a winner. Maybe he doesn't always have the greatest numbers or whatever, but he's a winner. Let's see. But that no more tells the X-Line true worth than does the misleading 9th ranking of the Eagles' Norm Van Brocklin. Putting these 2 old pros together gives the contest a promising element of a classic. So I don't know, Norm Van Brocklin's 9th ranked. I don't know. He's had a pretty good season. Like Lane, Van Brocklin will have a little more to work with than the team's first meeting. For one thing, the Dutchman has Paige Cothran, the recently acquired field goal kicker, who kicked down his old mates, the Los Angeles Rams, last week. Well, Cothran has not had exactly a bad. I think he's 6 out of 13 up to this game, to be honest with you. So he's not, he Cothran's an asset, but he was 3 out of 4 the week before. So going into the game, the Eagles played the Rams. So going into that game, the Cothran was like 3 out of 9 kicking field goals. So I mean, that's not super spectacular. But anyway, Van Brocklin says it's a great comfort to have him on his side. Often it is easier for a quarterback to maneuver a team into field goal kicking position than to drive all the way to a touchdown. And let's see what we got here. Here's your, this is the whole team right here. Whoops. There's only 36 guys on the team. Unbelievable. Eagles have actually, right, you look at it, there's actually 4 in this game, 4 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. 2 of them are just young lads, Len Dawson, Sonny Jurgensen, and 2 of them the veterans, Bobby Lane and Norman Van Brocklin. So we have 4 Hall of Fame quarterbacks in this game. Freaking unbelievable. You ain't going to have that nowadays. And here's the stats up until this point in time. You know, neither team has really rushed for a spectacular amount of yardage. You know, a little over 1,000 yards after 9 games. But the Eagles have much more passing yards, 300 more passing yards. All right. So next, we're going to go to the Pittsburgh Press, November 29th, 1959 edition of the Pittsburgh Press. What do they got to say here? Steelers give an edge over soaring Eagles. The Parker men, 4-point pick. Up there you go. So touch it. Got to refresh. Try it again. Philadelphia Eagles soaring as high as the birds they represent move into Forbes Field today, where they will clash with Coach Buddy Parker's Steelers, the newest spoilers of the National Football League. The Steelers, off consecutive victories over the Giants and the Browns, rule as 4-point favorites, a status that has brought no end of embarrassment to the Parker men in the past. The Steelers have played their finest football this year in the underdog role. Favored, they have been consistent losers. Parker still can't understand the reasoning which established the home team as favorites because, unlike earlier in the campaign when Philadelphia's victories were regarded as flukes, the second-place Birds have been a sound and spectacular football club. They have, as they say in the trade, gelled. Basically, the Eagles combine a strong, capable defensive unit with an offense that is nicely balanced between running and passing. Whether they're traveling over ground or through the air, Philadelphia has the personnel to meet any team in the league on even terms. In the Steelers' behalf, however, it must be pointed out that this team finally appears to have shrugged off the deflating effect of a series of early season injuries, which were responsible for at least a few of their 4 losses. An emergence of Gern Nagler as a pass receiver in last week's win over the Browns appears to have strengthened the Parker men considerably. Nagler's performance freed sophomore Jimmy Orr to go deep, a factor which returns to Steelers some of the striking power that marked their play in the final half of the season last year. 2. The Steelers' line is sound again. The return to action of tackle Joe Kruppa and Billy Ray Smith in the last 3 weeks have been a lifesaver for Parker. Kruppa teams with Ernie Stautner at tackle, while Smith and George Tarasovic, whose play has been of all-league caliber this season, work the ends. And in the backfield, Don Sutherland appears to have strengthened the secondary, a department which has been in a state of flux with Don Bishop, Bob Luna, and Ron Hall all taking shots at a regular job. Sutherland has been working at safety with Jack Butler since the New York game. That move shifted Dean Derby to a wingback berth, and the 190-pound veteran from Washington has been little short of terrific in his new role. The Steelers' interior offensive linemen will have their work cut out for them today, moving the Philly defenders. And Joe Robb, 225 pounds, is the only lineman under 250 pounds. The others are Jess Richardson, 272. Now we're going back to 59. These are some nice-sized guys, right? Ex-Steeler Don Owens at 255 and veteran Marion Campbell, who would eventually become the Eagles head coach in the 80s, is 250. Perhaps John Nisby, Mike Sandusky, and Ed Beatty should bring a bulldozer along with them. The game, the next to last home contest for the Steelers this year, will start at 2 p.m. And here we go. He's got, I like it. So we got this here, like this guy here, Pagliol. He's a fullback, but he sees a little action. I'm sorry, fullback. We got a halfback, but he's a fullback, right? Barnes, Eagles' best runner, size 537. Bielski, tight end, short receiver, best of the Tommy Brookshire, best of the defensive backs. I like that. That's pretty cool. These are the offensive lineups here. These are the numbers of all the players. Unfortunately, these numbers got cut off over here. But there was something over here, wasn't there? Well, yeah, but this talks about all the games, so I'm not going to bother. So let's dig into the action. What exactly happened during this snow job of a game? So let's go to Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, November 30th, 1959, of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. What do they got to say? What happened? Up. And you can see, right? We got some snow there, right? Look at that ground, right? That's football. Outdoors, in the weather elements, on grass, in the snow. Come on, man. Don't get any better than that. Lane spoilers clobbered Eagles 31-0. This one here. Racing through a snow squall, Jimmy Orr of the Steelers makes a first down on a reverse as Chuck Weber would be two B's. Chuck Weber, I'm going to say, of the Eagles comes up to make the tackle. All right. Bobby unlooses 4 TD passes. Is that a word? Unlooses? Yeah. Okay. Only 22,191 fans see Steelers buried Philadelphia's title hopes. Mixing whitewash with the snow and mud yesterday as frigid Forbes Field, the Pittsburgh Steelers blanked the Philadelphia Eagles 31-0 to all but end the title hopes of the Birds in the Eastern Conference of the National Football League. It marked the third straight win for Rooney U. A shivering crowd of 22,191, smallest of the waning grid season, saw Bobby Lane outshine Norm Van Brocklin as the Gold and Black gained revenge for its 28-24 loss early in the season at Franklin Field. The result gave the locals possession of the Skenley Trophy as state pro champs. 32-year-old Steeler quarterback passed for all 4 local TDs, added the extra points, and kicked a 17-yard field goal. Yeah, Bobby Lane, he was their kicker too. Norm Van Brocklin usually was the punter for the Eagles, and Bobby Lane was the field goal kicker for the Steelers. Could you imagine that? We got Patrick Mahomes. I think they just boosted his contract. I think he's making $32 trillion a year now. They just redid his contract for the third time, I think it is. Could you imagine him being the quarterback and the field goal and punter for the Chiefs? Could you imagine that? Right? Oh my God! He can't have mouth. He might get injured. Can't do that. Well, football's a little bit different back in the 50s. You only had so many guys. These guys actually wanted to play football. I mean, I know they do nowadays, but it was a little bit different back in the 50s than it is nowadays. Lane's scoring heaves were to 4 different receivers, 12 yards to Buddy Dial, who the Giants had, who had a very good career. The Giants had drafted him in the second round and let him go. The Steelers picked him up, and he had a very good career with the Steelers. The Giants let Buddy Dial go, and they also had Don Maynard after the 58, and they had him in camp. And they had Buddy Dial and Don Maynard in camp in 59. They let them both go. Real smart. They also let Vince Lombardi go after the 58. I mean, wow. Good moves, Giants. 19 yards to Jimmy Orr, 23 yards to Tom Tracy, and 2 to Gern Nagler. Bobby wound up with 12 completions and 28 shots for 182 yards and had 1 pass intercepted. Van Brockton actually outgained the winning quarterback with 15 hits on 31 tosses for 196 yards, but he had 3 stolen, 2 by Dean Derby, who now has 7 swipes for the season. Lane had plenty of company in the credits on the offensive platoon, and Jimmy Orr nabbed 4 passes for 78 yards and ran 45 yards on 2 end-arounds. Tracy proved a superior mutter, as they say at the racetracks, plowing for 122 yards on 23 tries. Larry Krutko returned to the starting lineup at fullback, smashed for 52 yards on 13 efforts. So what is that? Exactly 4 yards a carry. Not too bad. Sharing laurels with the attackers was the great defensive unit, which held Coach Buck Shaw's visitors to only 2 first downs rushing, while the Steelers were banging for a dozen. Total yards was 393 yards for the winners to only 225 for Philadelphia. So, in addition, you got this right. Once again, you got here. I mean, you'll see once again, the Eagles total yards gained rushing. I mean, this is really bad. But I mean, I said this has been their Achilles heel pretty much all year. I mean, they the Dutchman can throw the ball, right? And I don't remember, but yeah, I think he might have been out game throwing the ball like once or so all year long. Yeah, so he could always put the ball in the air and pick up yardage and all that. But the Eagles have always had haven't had the greatest rushing attack all season long. But you see here the Steelers had 228 yards, 165 rushing. I mean, solid game. They had 24 total first downs. The Eagles only had 9. So, all right. In addition, they fought through to block 2 field goal tries by Paige Coffin from the 22 and the 13. Not a block on a 13-yard. I mean, jeez. A 22 and a 13-yard field goal. That was one of the problems back then. It's not as good as it is today. The blocking there's a lot of block field goals back, to make sure of the shutout. Incidentally, it marked the first case of goose eggs since the Steelers held this same club without a score here in 1957 when the Rooney men won 6-0. There was one tough blow for the Steelers in their victory. Jack Butler, star defensive halfback, was carried off the field on a stretcher with 3 minutes remaining in the first half with an injury to his left leg. He was rushed to Mercy Hospital. Steelers waste no time. Southern carried back Bielski's kickoff, which started the game for the Steelers from the Steeler 4 to the 27th, and the Gold and Black was on its way to the first score. Tom Tracy contributed 2 brilliant runs of 24 and 18 yards, the second on a crisscross of the grid, which saw practically continued on the next page. All right, so we're over here. Refresh this here before it screws up on me. There we go. Every defender get a crack at him. The drive stalled in the mud, though, and at 4:51, Lane place kicked a 17-yard field goal for a 3-0 lead. And that's not easy because, Lane's on the field for every play. And then he has to step back. He's huffing and puffing. He's tired and all that. And he has to concentrate, line up, kick a field goal. It's not easy. Bielski's 57-yard run with a pass from Van Brockton put the Eagles on the local 16 a few minutes later. Henry hauled the pass catcher down from behind. Here, the Steeler defense put on its first fine display, holding the Birds to 2 yards in 3 plays. So Coffin tried a 22-yard field goal, but Tarasovic blocked it. The Eagles had another big opportunity as the first quarter ended, but muffed it. Tracy was hurt with 1:42 to go in the stanza, and Elter replaced him. Leo fumbled on the first play. Kayat scooped up the ball and a handful of snow at the Steeler 22 and skidded down to the 6. The defense did it again. The home defense came through again. 2 running plays were smashed without a gain as the quarter ended, and a pass to Barnes in the end zone to start the second stanza proved a bit too far, so he could only touch it with one hand. Cothran now tried his second field goal from the 13, but Rieger blocked it. Albin picked up the ball and got to the 32 with 15 seconds gone. Elter made amends for his earlier bobble by grabbing a 28-yard pass from Lane. Rooney Yu was next assessed 15 yards for holding, but Lane got it all back with interest on a 26-yard pass to Orr. The home team kept right on going, too, to register a TD on a 12-yard pass to Dial in the extreme left corner of the end zone at 5:15. Lane converted for a 10-0 advantage. Van Brocklin had the Birds in position on a local 24 with 21 seconds to go, but Rieger tipped the pass and Luna nabbed it to end the threat. 13 plays lucky. Duplicating their early surge of the first quarter, the Steelers moved 73 yards and a lucky 13 plays for a TD at 6:05 of the third quarter. Lane heaved the last 19 to Orr in the end zone, then converted for a 17-0 lead. Twice afterward, the Birds were on their way, but Derby came up with his 6th and 7th interceptions of the season to wreck their hopes. The first was tipped by Sutherland, then grabbed by Dean on the Steelers' 16. The other was picked off on the local 30-yard stripe. The final two chances of the Eagles came early in the fourth quarter, but the Eagles just couldn't penetrate the stout Steeler defense. They had a 4th and inches situation early on the Pittsburgh 34, but Peaks was smashed in the mud without a gain. Later, a 4th down, Van Brocklin pass to McDonald went astray, and the visitors took over on their own 24. So the Eagles were getting down there. They just, the Steelers were capitalizing on their chances. The Eagles were not. Then the Steeler attacking unit took over. They traveled to the Eagles' 7, and Lane hit Nagler in the end zone on a quick pass, but it was nullified by a 15-yard holding penalty. That didn't bother Bobby Lane. He probably heaved to Tracy on the right side, and Tom the Bomb Tracy rushed down the right sideline for a 22-yard touchdown. Lane shot his third conversion through the sticks for a 24-0 edge. Albin intercepted a Van Brocklin pass and ran 24 yards to the Steeler 4 as the final 2 minutes arrived. Lane picked up 1 yard on his sneak, but Tracy was stalled at the scrimmage line. A pass failed, but the Eagles were holding, giving Rooney Yu a first down on the 2. Lane failed on his sneak, but hit Nagler in the end zone with only 13 seconds to go, added the extra point, and sent the freezing fans home with a 31-0 victory. Now, that would never happen today. You're up 24-0. This is a little bit of a difference between nowadays. They have a little more respect. For the most part, this would not happen. Right? Unless you got a coach that has a vendetta against another team or another coach or something like that. But for the most part, if you're up 24-0 and you're only on, even on the other team's 2-yard line, it's 13 seconds to go. You're not scoring a touchdown. You're taking a knee, and the game's ending. Right, but that's not the way it was back then. And in case you're wondering, we got some soccer results here. Castle Shannon beat East Liberty, looks like. All right, so now what do we got here? What do we got? The Philadelphia Inquirer, the November 30th, 1959 edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer. What do they got to say on the game here? All right. Let me refresh the page before it screws up. Steelers rip Eagles on Lane's passes, 31-0. Bobby hits for 4 TDs, kicks 4 PATs, and a field goal. Here's Tommy McDonald running into the goalpost, apparently. Even the goalpost was against the Eagles in their 31-0 loss. Tommy McDonald, with a touchdown pass in his hands, dropped the ball when he rammed the post early in the second quarter. Don Sutherland is the Steeler in hot pursuit. Yep. When it ain't going right, it ain't going right. I mean, you can go on countless, things and tell you when things aren't going right. Your team runs into the goalpost and drops a pass, and the other teams don't. So it is what it is. 33-year-old Texan who thought Snow was pure hearsay until he grew into manhood buried the Eagles in the stuff here Sunday. Bobby Lane threw 4 touchdown passes, kicked as many extra points, and a field goal. This was enough to defeat the Eagles 31-0 and left them still tied with the Cleveland Browns for second place in the National Football League's Eastern Division, because the Browns, they lost. Who did they? I know they lost. They lost 2 of their final 3 as well. So I know that the following week they lost to who did they lose to? They lost to the 49ers, I think. I think they lost to the 49ers by like 1 point. So it was the kind of same thing with the Browns. The Browns lost like 2 of their final 3, and because they had going into this game, they had 3 losses as well too. So the Browns fell apart, the Eagles fell apart. Lane provided heartwarming entertainment for 22,191 as he outshone Norm Van Brocklin, a native of the Northwest Snow Country, in a game that had nothing for the Eagles except a series of frustrations. And this would be one of them right here. Hall of Fame wide receiver Tommy McDonald, probably the ball in his hands, right? Runs into the goalpost, drops the pass. Right? 2 blocked field goals, right? The Birds tried 2 field goals and had both blocked. They had 4 Van Brocklin's passes intercepted, and they lost an almost certain touchdown when Tommy McDonald ran into a goalpost upright just as he was catching a pass. This happened before the Steelers had gotten deep into their task of adding the Eagles to a succession of victims. That includes the Giants and the Browns. They built their lead, and the victory over the Giants was in Yankee Stadium. So they beat all 3 teams who were ahead of them in the standings. They had built their lead to only 10-0 as snow fell lightly, then heavily, then stopped, then came intermittently. A mild snow swirl greeted the teams at the kickoff, which Pittsburgh moved 66 yards to give Lane the office to open the scoring with a 17-yard field goal. The Eagles were to have 2 Paige Cothran field goal attempts blocked before the Steelers tallied a touchdown on an 11-yard pass from Lane through heavy snow to end Buddy Dial for a 10-0 halftime lead. First, George Tarasovic, an end who has been throwing his 245 pounds around the league for 7 years, threw them in front of the ex-Rams attempts from the 22, nullifying the good work of a 57-yard drive. Dick Bielski was the hero of this fruitless push. He tunneled through a massive Steelers effort after taking Van Brocklin's short pass to run 51 yards worth of a 57-yard gain down to the Pittsburgh 16. Then John Rieger, a 230-pound tackle who has been red dogging around the league for 5 seasons, blocked a Cothran place field goal from the 12. This made naught of the 54-yard lumber, which Ed Kayat took after fielding a Steeler fumble on the hop. Kayat ran after Steeler halfback Leo Elter lost his grip while being hit by successive jolting tackles by Tom Brookshire and Bob Pellegrini. Kayat ran to the Steelers 7. The Eagles failed to gain in 3 downs before Cothran kicked into Rodgers. After that, the Eagles, outpassed by Lane, and mainly because of the zigzag scampering of Tracy, a 5'9" scamp from Tennessee, never got in position for a field goal. They got close to the Pittsburgh goal on several occasions later in the game, but by then it was no time to fishing for mere 3-pointers. By then, touchdowns were needed. This was a situation early in the second quarter when McDonald found out that the goal post could withstand the flight force of his 182 pounds. He went after Van Brocklin's lead pass with arms extended straight out. The ball settled in his hands a split second before he hit the post. He was knocked sprawling, but bounced right up on his feet and stayed in the game the rest of the way. Tommy's mishap came 2 plays after they had fairly caught Bob Luna's only poor punt of the day on the Steelers' 37. Van fired one of his 15 of his 32 passes. He completed 12 yards over the middle to Bobby Walston on the 25. Then he shot for Tommy and broke. Then he shot for Tommy and broke. But the goalpost broke up the play. This just about broke up the Eagles too. Dutch's next pass. All right, we'll go to the next page of the November 30th, 1959 edition of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Let me refresh before it screws up on me here. All right. Whoops. And if you want to get a little bit of a bowling clinic here, in case you want to read that, make sure a bowler. So, but we got here, it says, Dutch's next pass resulted in Luna intercepting the ball tipped by Rieger and set the Steelers off on a 74-yard drive to their second touchdown. Oh, I got to move my legs here. Ooh. Oh, my God. My dog. Dog Rainey's at my feet. Okay, that's better. The advance was kept alive by an automatic first down on the 35 when Bob Pellegrini, whose linebacking stood out in the Eagles' generally drab defensive performance, was judged guilty of holding. After that, Lane threw 2 third-down passes to Jimmy Orr. The first went 13 yards down to the 21. The second, 19 yards down to the end zone. Meanwhile, the Eagles' luck got worse. Pittsburgh halfback Dean Derby intercepted twice to foil Eagles' drive. Bird fullback Clarence Peaks ran into Van Brocklin as he was handing off and took a loss on a 4th and inches situation to ruin another, and a 4th down pass from the 24 was overthrown just enough to trim McDonald's fingernails at the goal line. Never heard that one before. That's a good one. That misconnection immediately preceded the Steelers' 76-yard drive that Lane's 23-yard touchdown pass to Tracy. Bobby hit the little target with a big pass on the play after his 8-yard rifle shot to Garnagler in the end zone was nullified by an illegal receiver. Lane then bided his time until only 13 seconds were left before shooting a 2-yard scoring pass to Nagler that topped the Eagles' first shutout in 11 league games since a 20-0 rout on a snow-rimmed field at Washington in the 1958 finale. Buck Shaw called that game one of the worst exhibitions by a pro team he's seen. He may be inclined to revise his ratings after this one. All right, so and you can see they were very, right. Eagles, the Steelers scored in every period, and I said that last touchdown that would never happen nowadays. For the most part, I'm not saying it wouldn't, I'm not saying there wouldn't be a coach here or there who wouldn't do something like that, but. You got 13 seconds. You have 24-0. I don't care what yard line you're on. You're taking a knee, and the game is ending. Right? Yeah. You're winning 24-0. You got to shut out. You're not throwing a touch. Not trying to throw a pass in the end zone. I can guarantee you that. All right. So that's that. And then I got some other stuff here. Let's see here. Share screen. We can pop it up here. Where are we at here? Oh, wait, let me, okay, there it is. Okay, let's try this again here. There we go. All right. The Philadelphia Bulletin, November 30th, 1959. Lane's hot passes melt Eagles' hopes for a title. Pete Retzlaff is trapped for a loss after taking a pitch out from Norm Van Brocklin during yesterday's game of the Steelers at Pittsburgh. Bringing down Pete with ankle tackle is John Rieger. Philadelphia variety of eagle is no snowbird, or putting it another way, the Eagles matched the weather in vileness yesterday as Bobby Lane, Tom Tracy, and the rest of the red-hot Steelers snowballed the migratory birds out of the Eastern title contention with a humiliating 31-0 defeat. 3 times in 3 years, the Eagles have been flattened on snow-littered highways with a thud that brooked no alibis or apologies. 2 of the flattenings occurred in Washington, but yesterday flattening in the rutted, freezing hog pen known as Forbes Field was the worst of all. It was the most galling 60 minutes of football I've ever endured, said Coach Buck Shaw. We never played good football at any time. Our runners couldn't move. Our pass receivers couldn't get clear. It took 6 Eagles to bring 1 Steeler down, then gave us a real thorough beating. Lane didn't call a dozen plays in the huddle. He just trotted up behind the center, looked over the Eagles' defense, and then automatic it to a death without pity. He threw 4 touchdown passes and kicked the field goal. Wow, that's amazing. Lane didn't call a dozen plays in the huddle. He just trotted up behind the center, looked over the Eagles' defense. Wow, that's unbelievable. Huh? Tracy, the 5'9", 205-pound jelly bean, also was without pity. He had 122 yards and 23 carries. He made the Eagles look like a bunch of floundering bulls as he sidestepped their aimless charge. Even fate conspired against the bumbling birds. Twice in the first half, 2 field goal attempts by Paige Cothran from apple pie range were blocked and recovered by the Steelers. Then Tommy McDonald was jarred loose from a touchdown pass when he banged into the goalpost. And in the final seconds, the officials added to the Eagles' humiliation by calling a holding penalty on the 4 after the Steelers had been throttled on 4th down. The 25-degree weather not only numbed the Eagles' offense and defense, but their strategy as well. They won the toss and elected to kick to the Steelers on a field that could only get messier as the vile afternoon progressed. The strategy backfired for the first period kickoff on the 29. Zoop. And with Tracy slithering for 43 yards, rolled to the Eagle 10. Stopped there, Lane dropped back and kicked a field goal from the 17. This same strategy forced the Eagles to kick off again in the second half. Result, a Steelers 74-yard touchdown march that put the game beyond reach at 17-0 and chewed up 7 minutes of the third period. Lane's payoff pitch was a 19-yarder to Jimmy Orr. The play before, the Eagles' Art Powell dropped an interception. Right from the start, fate began haunting the Eagles. After Lane kicked the 3-pointer, Dick Bielski took a flip pass and broke into the clear. But a Steeler linebacker stepped on his shoe, and it was half off his foot when he stumbled to halt a 57-yard journey down at the 16. Then Cothran's field goal try from the 22 in a blinding snowstorm was blocked by George Tarasovic. Cothran's second field goal try at the start of the second period was smothered by a host of Steelers at the 12. The Eagles got this scoring opportunity when Ed Kayat recovered a fumble by Leo Elter and rambled to the Steelers 7. Dick Albin picked up Cothran's misfire and ran it out to the 31. From there, the Steelers moved to their first touchdown, with Lane spearing Buddy Dial in the end zone with an 11-yard scoring throw. The Eagles were wobbly by now, but still alive. Van Brocklin punted. Right? It says so you got Bobby Lane kicking field goals, Norm Van Brocklin the punter. That ain't happening nowadays. Punting out to the Steeler 4, and the Eagles got the ball back on the enemy 37. Bobby Walston caught a 12-yarder, and then McDonald grabbed a pass on the goal line between 2 defenders, only to run into the white upright. Van Brocklin's next throw was intercepted on the 9 by Bobby Luna just before the half ended. From then on, the Steelers piled it on. They posted 7 points in the third period and 14 more in the fourth. Their third touchdown was good for a laugh. It started from the 24 with Tracy Scorman for 11, then running all over the field for 2 yards as the entire Eagle team clutched at his muddy trousers. The laughs grew louder when the Steelers drove to the Eagle 8. Then they were set back on the 23 for having an illegal receiver downfield. On the next play, Lane flipped along the sideline to Tracy, who raced over for the touchdown. Only 13 seconds were left in the farce when Albin intercepted the Van Brocklin pass on the 30 and returned it to the 7. The Steelers could get only 3 yards in 4 tries, but with a holding penalty put them on the 2, Lane flipped over the line to Gern Nagler to make it 31-0. All right, and we got him. Now, this is the Daily News, November 30th, 1959 edition of the Philadelphia Daily News. And here's the blinding snowstorm right here. I mean, you can see this right here. I mean, look at that. Snow, man, snow. Steeler and Jimmy Orr picks up a first down on a reverse play. Pursuing is Jess Richardson, number 72, plowing through snowfall. What do we got here? All right. Numbed and disgusted, as they were by their dismal performance yesterday on a snow-sodden Forbes field. The Eagles refused to concede they had been frozen out of a title shot by a pair of hot Steelers named Bobby Lane and Tom Tracy. There are still 2 games to play, said Coach Buck Shore after the 31-0 shutout by the best home stretch team in the National Football League. If we can pick ourselves up and go out and win both of them, I think we'll be there for the showdown. Their disappointing belly flop against the Steelers left the Birds 2 games behind the conference-leading Giants, but still tied for second with the Browns, who were upset 21-20 by the 49ers. The Giants walloped the Redskins 45-14 at New York, and the Giants the following week would blow out the Browns 48 or 49-7. So I've had the feeling all along that this race would go into the last day of the season, said Shaw. Giants can lose 2 and we can win 2. Well, yeah, you're right. Yeah, but that's not what happened. As long as you have a shooting chance in this league, you don't give up. Like, you can't be more correct than that. You never give up, right? Ironically, the Eagles will be shooting at the same 2 teams who have the final shots at the Giants. New York hosts the Browns next week while the Eagles visit the Redskins. On the final Sunday, the Browns will visit Franklin Field and the Giants will be at Washington. There's something else at stake, too. The coach continued, if we can't take these last 2, people will say we lucked our way as far as we got. We have a lot of young fellows on our squad. This test could be the making of them. The players, rookies and veterans alike, certainly did not act like the season had ended on the slippery, half-balled field outside. They cursed themselves, the weather, Bobby Lane, and themselves again. No one could explain the failure to look anything like contenders. In retrospect, the turning point of the game was the kickoff. And the reference is to the one-sided statistics, not Shaw's decision to kick off after the Eagles had won the toss, although the consequences made for much second-guessing. Pittsburgh drove for a field goal in 8 plays after the opening kickoff and went in for a touchdown on the same number at the start of the second half. Shaw supported the strategy with good logic. We have a history of getting into a jam in our own territory when we receive, Buck explained. Either we fumble or we just can't move for that first down and we have to kick it out, giving the other club an advantage in position. By kicking off, we hoped to put them in that fix. The trouble was we just couldn't hold them. That was the story of a long, frustrating afternoon. The Eagles judge couldn't hold Lane, who consistently came up with a big play on 3rd down while passing for 165 yards and 4 touchdowns. Nor could they hold Tracy, who slithered and cut for 122 yards on the ground. Tom the Bomb Tracy modestly attributed his great day to the slippery field, although he couldn't explain why it didn't work that way for the Eagles backs, who netted a season low of 29 yards rushing. The Eagles are one of the hardest tackling teams in the league, Tracy insisted, but the ball carrier has a big advantage on the field like that. When they set themselves, you can run around them before they can get untracked, and when they play you loose, you can run right over them. Asked how the Steelers could get themselves up to knock off New York, Cleveland, and Philadelphia on successive Sundays while their own title chances dimmed and finally went out, the chunky halfback explained, when you play for Buddy Parker, you play to win. If I hadn't been for all the injuries we had earlier in the season, we would have been going in for that title ourselves. As it was, I think most of our guys would have liked to see the Eagles take it. But like I said, you play this game to win. Fate frustrated the Eagles, too, when they had several early chances to change probably the complexion of the game. On their first series of the opening period, Rich Bielski caught a short pass over the line and burst through the Steelers. It's got to be, you got some typo. And burst through 4 Steelers, what looked like an easy romp to the goal. But Bielski stumbled, lost the stride, and was scored from behind on the Steelers 16 after a 57-yard run. His shoe had been ripped off at the heel when he made the catch. when the Eagles bogged down, Paige Cothran came in to try a 21-yard field goal, and as if one cue, a short cross field blizzard turned the scene white. The Birds are still trying to figure where George Tarasavic came from to block the kick. There was no excuse for another blocked field goal, an attempt from the 12 early in the second quarter. However, I'd hate to think one of our linemen was afraid of someone out there, said Shaw, but I'll be looking at the films very carefully. It looks like unfortunately, it looks like I cut off, I guess, some of this paper here, I guess, unfortunately. But the Birds got another freakish knock near the end of the second quarter. So it looks like there's maybe some over here, maybe. But the Birds got another freakish knock near the end of the second quarter when Tommy McDonald slipped between two Steelers and caught a 24-yard pass from Norman Brocklin, only to ram into the right side goalpost and lose the ball. The Steelers took the second half kickoff and calmly ate up 5 minutes and 45 seconds on the TD drive that made the Eagles' cause futile. Pittsburgh controlled the ball for 9 minutes and 15 seconds of the third period. Maybe, I'm not sure, but possibly all of this over here. But so if I cut that off, I do apologize. But you get the point. It's not a good day for the Eagles. I mean, sometimes it just when things go wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it. But for both these teams, relatively, you can certainly say relatively successful seasons. As you saw, I mean, Pittsburgh, without a doubt, the final 5 games or so were very, very good. They just stumbled out of the starting gates. A lot of it was, as you read in those articles, was due to injuries. Or else, if it wasn't for that, their 6-5-1 record would have been a little bit better, and they would have been right up there at the top. But as I said, 58 and 59 seasons for the Steelers were just almost identical. If you ever see My Cousin Vinny, if you haven't seen it, it's a good movie. You should see it. They stumbled out of the gates in 58. The last 7 games in the 58 season, the Steelers didn't lose a game. The same thing here. I mean, they stumbled out of the gates due to injuries, and once they got healthy, Bobby Lane worked his magic, and the Steelers were a very hot team until at the end of the 1959 season. But for the Eagles, they lost 31-0, and embarrassing, horrible, and all that stuff and everything. I get it, but still, they had 2 wins in 1958, went to 7 wins in 1959, plus 5 in a 12-game season. They had nothing to be ashamed of. So the Eagles' title hopes went down in flames with a 31-0 defeat at the hands of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's the way it was on this date, November 29th, 1959, as the Philadelphia Eagles played the Pittsburgh Steelers at Forbes Field in pro football's first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.